Dubai International has not only become the world's busiest airport for international passengers, but also a global benchmark in innovation, efficiency, and travel experience. Ladies and gentlemen, of course, joining him once again for this extensive conversation is the ever-distinguished Ms. Sharanjit Clare. And this conversation will explore Dubai's strategic rise as an aviation super hub and Mr. Giffiths' leadership philosophy and what lies ahead for global air travel in an era of transformation and innovation. So ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mr. Paul Giffiths, and over to you, Ms. Sharanjit.
Thank you again. How wonderful. And thank you for being with us, Paul. Great to see you, and as described there, you are truly a visionary. 18 years at the helm of Dubai International Airport as CEO. You have seen such a journey and undertaken such a journey, both literally and figuratively, with Dubai International Airports. So give us a sense of what has changed since you took the role of CEO in terms of the innovations, the cutting-edge things that Dubai International Airports has done to really help innovate and push the envelope when it comes to how airports should be in the future.
Well, thank you very much. I mean, if I cast my mind back to 2007, it's very interesting when you get a call to say, are you interested in taking on this particular role? I mean, I was running London Gatwick Airport at the time, and Gatwick and Dubai were about the same size, 32.4 million, I think, passenger numbers. And it's very interesting because when they ring you up, they say, there's an opportunity to maintain the success of this wonderful institution. And then when you get a bit closer in, you realise that actually there's a bit of a transformation needed. And when I arrived, I could certainly see that there was a transformation. The reason for my appointment actually was because Emirates had just placed the largest, at the time, order for aircraft in the history of aviation, 90 A380s. And I think it was believed that unless the airport underwent a dramatic change, that it would be gridlock, because they just couldn't handle that number of aircraft starting in 2008 from the first delivery. So when I arrived, there was a massive transformation role to be undertaken. There was a lot of infrastructure being delivered, a lot of changes being made. I had to really re-professionalise the entire team. I mean, we had something like 3,700 employees, which for an airport of the size was slightly more than we needed. In fact, actually, we just recorded 93.2 million passengers, sorry, 92.3 million passengers, and we only have 1,700 employees. So in terms of the technological change, you can see the productivity has gone through the roof. I mean, I think the first thing is delivery of infrastructure was very important, and actually transformation of systems was very important, because you've got to understand that for an airport to be successful, you've got to keep everything moving. The fact that actually we've been through dramatic growth in the last 10 years without actually any additional infrastructure is really testament to that we've invested hugely, because airports are fundamentally about two things. They're about the flow of customers, and then they're the quality of the dwell space. And what we've tried to do is maximise the flow at the critical point, because I don't think I've ever met anyone who says, do you know, I really wish I could spend more time at an airport. And what we've done is we've respected people's time by dramatically lowering the amount of dwell time at airports, by eliminating a lot of the legacy processes. I mean, it's interesting hearing Mr. Kishore talk about, biometrics. That's definitely one thing we've done. You can go through our airports now on arrival and departure without taking your passport out of your pocket if you actually have registered in the system. So merging airport biometrics for immigration with check-in is something we're now working on. I think the vision in the future is trying to make one biometric signature the single transaction that our customers have with the airport process, and then being able to put that with security. So within a couple of paces and a few seconds, that'll be it. All the legacy processes that we put up with for far too long in airports will be consigned to the history books where they belong. So really it's been that transformation and also the quality of infrastructure and the fact that we've micromanaged every single aspect of our capacity and customer service quality with our entire stakeholders. I think that's been part of the transformation journey. I could go on for a long time.
Yes, sadly, we just have 15 minutes and now about 11. So we'll talk about it, and hopefully people will get a chance to come and chat with you about some of those strategic decisions that have led to this incredible transformation that you speak about. Interesting, you took the helm in 2007, which was right at the helm of the global financial crisis that then ensued a few years, and lasted a few years. Right now we have a global trade war, and it was a question I asked Secretary Waldenham earlier. Obviously there's lots of concerns within this room with all the decision makers in the industry about where the global economy is headed and how that might impact the aviation market. So your thoughts very quickly on that.
Well, I think first of all, we've got 240 cities across the world that are directly linked to Dubai International. And I think the thing is, when we've seen various crises in different parts of the world, what we've seen is if there's a crisis in one particular flow of goods or supply chain, there's an opportunity elsewhere. So the network, fortunately, is large enough to be resilient. But of course, the politics are really interesting at the moment. I mean, yes, it's a global trade war one day, but then we forgive each other the next day, and then there's another one the day after. You know, the unpredictability of politics is not helpful for global trade, but you know, I think the problem is so far, we just don't know where this is heading. There's so much pain, I think, being felt by the world as a result of this, and we just hope that common sense will eventually prevail. I mean, I think that, you know, we have now, for a few decades, we've come to rely on global trade facilitated by aviation, because 1% of all goods moves by air, about 35% of the value of all goods move by air. So aviation plays a vital part in the movement of global commodities. You know, it's a lifeline for so many different goods and services and products across the world. So we just hope common sense will prevail, because I don't think a global trade war is in anyone's interest.
No, you're absolutely right. And as you say, you know, aviation is a lifeline. It is an industry that, as we heard Secretary Waldenham say, and yourself as well, it's a resilient industry. It is one that is a mainstay and isn't going away anytime soon. So my next question is, you talked earlier just around infrastructure, you know, the massive transformation that has taken place at Dubai International Airports. And in terms of infrastructure, the fact that you haven't actually added to it in about a decade, in spite of this massive exponential increase in passengers coming through. So talk us through some of your plans over the next few years. I believe 400 gates with 5 runways for an anticipated 260 million passengers. I will let that sink in. Those are staggering numbers. How do you aim to achieve it?
Well, the first thing is, the last thing we want to do is create a massive airport with all the associated problems of a massive airport. I mean, our legs are roughly the same length as they've been for, you know, hundreds of years, thousands of years, so the walking distances cannot extend. I mean, I won't name and shame here, but there are too many airports, some of them quite modern, where the actual customer experience is pretty horrific. You know, the level changes, the long walking distances, the poor signage, the sheer transit time. And the last thing we need to do for our customers is to extend the amount of panic there is in the travel journey. And so what we're trying to actually do is create 8 smaller airports, about 30 million each self-contained, and link them together with a comprehensive communication system that will enable people to do exactly as I described earlier. The check-in will be very, very quick, very easy, and no fuss. And then you'll board a train which will drop you off at your appropriate terminal, which will very clearly communicated to you before you leave home. And then the idea is you'll be able to relax and dwell, knowing that your aeroplane's just a few minutes walk away, very close to you. And the idea of that is to sort of bring the intimacy back, but bring it back at scale. I know it sounds like a contradiction, but I think we do not need larger and larger airports. What we need is airport systems that are tightly woven together to operate like a large airport, but let's not try and aggregate everyone together. We do this because some airport operators are quite lazy. They like the idea of being able to process people in a single space. But there's really no need to bring, 260 million passengers through one single pinch point and then redistribute them. I'd rather keep them separate and keep each journey quite intimate, but still make it effective and efficient. The idea being it saves time, it makes the journey more appealing, it creates what will be a very competitive product in a very competitive industry.
Fascinating. So you want to give passengers a sense of intimacy, but then have it at scale. That's fascinating. And as you say, it does sound a bit counterintuitive, but it's such a fascinating thing if it can be done. So for the airport operators sitting in this room, and particularly the Indian airport operators, how can they collaborate with Dubai? How can they learn some of those strategies that you put in place, in terms of being able to, as you say, you've been described as a visionary. So give us some of those visionary insights on what passengers, as well as airport operators, should be looking forward to.
I think there's three important things when you consider the efficiency of an airport. The first thing is, why do airports exist? They exist because they are translating journeys from surface-based journeys to air-based journeys. And that is the fundamental reason they exist. Now, I think the thing is that a lot of airports are designed to provide a very, very good experience from the forecourt to the aeroplane, but actually they don't think very much about the land transportation. The location and the connectivity of land-based transport solutions is just as important in the supply chain of airport capacity. So I think that's going to have to be fairly transformative. We have to work very much closely with the ecosystem on the ground, so railways, roads, all the various new technologies. I think there's going to be an absolute transformation in personal mobility in the future, which will assist in this. So that's the first thing. Try and actually get the ground transportation and connectivity optimized to maximize the catchment area and make it very convenient. The second thing, and I think this is probably the most important thing, a lot of people involved in aviation and airports forget the business that they're actually in. And that is, their wages are paid by the customers that come through the airport. And it doesn't matter which particular authority or organisation that anyone at the airport works for, it is absolutely essential that they remember they're serving that customer. And we need to make that seamless. I mean, again, as a traveller, you go through so many airports where the immigration service is disconnected. Everyone seems to go off shift as soon as you arrive. You can also get that feeling sometimes going through airports that no one there is really interested in the fact that you're trying to make a connection. So I think the fact that you are there to serve the customer, and we've put something in called 1DXP, which is a training program that every single person, irrespective of who they work for, goes through to really focus on making absolutely sure they have a seamless customer service delivery. It needs to be quick, it needs to be efficient, it needs to be friendly, and it needs to be reassuring. So I think that would really transform the customer service ethos of airports if more airport managers really understood that. And I think the last thing is absolutely optimize every single component part in the capacity supply chain. I mean, there's so much innate capacity in airports. I mean, when I arrived at DXB, everyone was saying, well, there's no way you'll get it beyond 65 million. That's the absolute limit with all the infrastructure that's delivered. But of course, when the financial crisis hit in 2008, capital budgets were very difficult to secure. We came up with a program to hit 90 million by 2020. It was a $3.7 billion program, which is a lot less than building a new airport and more runways, etc. at the time. And the only thing we failed with was the timescale. We delivered it by 2018, so that was actually a positive failure. And I think the thing is, airports really need to understand that the infrastructure is very expensive, and if we can optimize You know, things like runway movements, you can limit stand occupancy, you can work closely with coordinators to get every ounce of capacity out of every single asset. You'd be really, really surprised how much you can push an airport's declared capacity limit. We've proved it time and time again that you can keep going. I think with our small, two dependent runways, with very, very small footprint, we are 24/7, which really does help. We can probably get to about 115 to 120 million. We may have to get there depending on how long it takes us to build a new airport.
Fascinating. So some great advice, tips and tricks from one visionary on how we can make airports more efficient, as you say, a seamless experience. But let's go back to this idea that obviously the UAE and India have an inextricable relationship. There's this great interdependence. So what can India apply realistically in its airport systems that have, I guess, to some extent, you know, you've sort of laid the way in what Dubai is doing. What can we learn from you, and what can India apply?
Well, I was fascinated to hear the Secretary talk about the doubling of the number of operational airports in India. That's an absolutely fascinating statistic. I don't think there's any country on the planet that's got the capability to expand their aviation infrastructure to that extent. And I think actually that will take advantage of all the new technology that's coming in with new aircraft types, because economics of long-haul aviation are changing fundamentally. You don't now have to buy a very large, wide-bodied aircraft to be able to fly those long distances economically. You can do it equally economically with a very small aircraft, and that actually bodes very well for direct international service from smaller airports in India. Actually, it's probably the one country that will make the most benefits of that technological change. So I think that's a major benefit. And I think the UAE and India have such a long-standing relationship. The trading relationship goes back further than living memory. In fact, the UAE, until I think the early 70s, the Indian rupee was actually the currency. And India remains our premier market, 12 million passengers a year, you know, more than 3 million through Mumbai, almost 3 million through Delhi. So it's an incredibly important market for us. We clearly love to see greater liberalisation, more capacity between the two countries. I think that would help both sides. Obviously, the politics of that are beyond my pay grade, but I really do think that if we could liberalise the air service agreement between India and the UAE, then India and the UAE would greatly benefit from that. And I think certainly, you know, the professionalisation of the Indian Airlines is helping them be more competitive, and I hope that that will lead to greater liberalisation.
Good to hear. Now, we've heard a lot of the previous speakers talk about just the potential that exists here and in this region to grow. You know, the fact is India is the world's most populous country. You've got an untapped, underpenetrated market of all of these future passengers who are currently probably 15 at the moment, who will be traveling. So talk us through, you know, the actual ambitions of this region to grow. In 30 years' time, where do you see the global aviation hub being? Will it be this region? Will it be somewhere else? And how are we going to get there?
If you take a quick perspective of what's happening around the world, you know, you look at the mature markets, you know, the Americas and Europe, very, very difficult indeed to expand airport capacity, because in mature communities with large populations, the environmental impact of that is huge. I mean, the difficulty, of course, is that new runways are being built, but with such restrictions that the new capacity and the investment that's being put there cannot actually be realised and used. So that is difficult. I think uniquely in India, with the developing infrastructure, and obviously in the Middle East, with the ability to create new airports in unpopulated areas, that means that actually most of the growth in the infrastructure is likely to be in actually this region. So I think the future is very bright indeed. I mean, if you look at what's happening in KSA, you look at what's happening in Istanbul, you look at what's happening in the UAE, in Qatar, the amount of airport capacity and the investment that's going in, and the amount of activity for construction, it's just quite immense. And I don't know who will be the winners and losers. I think the airport industry and the aviation industry is likely to continue to expand if we can make it sustainable in some way. And I think the future now with the connecting airports, Qatar is obviously huge amount of connectivity, 92% I think connecting traffic. We're about 50-50 at the moment, and it varies between 60-40, 40-60 between transfer and point-to-point passengers, because the growth of the city has been so significant. So I think this region is going to be where all of the growth in the aviation industry is likely to take place over the next 10 years.
An enviable place to be, all of the growth. We've got a minute or so left, so a couple of questions, and I guess this is a question I asked earlier as well. In 20 years' time, if I'm a passenger who's about to go through Dubai airports and I'm obviously travelling somewhere else, what will my experience be like? And I know, again, because you've made such innovative strides already, it's the fact that you won't need much of a biometric marker. You can actually just walk in through the gates, if there are gates at all, and literally just be recognised on facial recognition alone, retina scans, etc., etc. And in fact, travelling here to Delhi, that's exactly the experience I had in Changi Airport from Singapore, where I live. So talk us through how that might change in 20 years. How can we refine some of those amazing technologies to make it truly seamless for a passenger like myself to travel?
I think the first thing is the choice of different destinations from airports will greatly increase, because smaller airports will be able to sustain many more cities with the transformation in the economics of smaller aeroplanes. I imagine that in Dubai you'll have something like 700 cities to join instead of the 240 that we've got at the moment. That's the first thing. I think the second thing is we are about to go through a major revolution in personal mobility. I mean, we tie up trillions of dollars across the world in personal transport and owning cars. And you talk to the younger generation now, they're not really interested in owning a car or having a particular association with a car brand. Everything is, I pay for it when I need it. I think the technology is going to move on. UAVs I'm very excited about. I think we are going to be traveling, point to point in the sky, separated by networks, and roads, car parks, all of those things that we currently associate with surface transport will go through a massive revolution. And I think the connectivity between airports, aircraft, and personal mobility for the last mile or so of the journey will be transformational. I think it will be a much, much nicer experience than we see now.
So time's up, but I've got one quick question, and I think we stand between you and lunch. 18 years at Dubai, helming Dubai International Airports, we started with that conversation. Let's end with some of the best decisions that you have ever made professionally, and have you had any regrets?
Well, it's very interesting. It's a very dear friend of mine in the audience today who I met with earlier on, and I reminded him of a conversation I had in Malaysia in June 2007. There's a clue in the country I've just mentioned. And that was, look, I've been asked if I would look at the role in Dubai to transform the aviation sector there. What do you think? And he said to me, I think that would be a great job. It would be a real feather in your cap if you took it. Bashir, you've been absolutely right. It's been 18 amazing years. So thanks for your wise counsel there. It was very well placed. Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, I think we'll end on that note. It was an absolute pleasure speaking to you, Paul Giffiths, a true visionary in the industry. Please, a big round of applause.
May I request for a group photograph of both of you, please? Thank you.
It occurs to me we are very colour coordinated, as well as the backdrop.
And ladies and gentlemen, I would request all our delegates and participants to kindly remain seated for a quick, short next session. And we are proud to welcome GMR Airports Limited, GAL, one of our exclusive Diamond Plus sponsors for this prestigious event. Their generous support has been instrumental in making this gathering possible, and we extend our sincere gratitude to GAL for their continued partnership and commitment to advancing the aviation industry. And before we move ahead, we present a short video from GMR.
This is more than a story of an airport. This is the story of a vision for the future. A vision that will change the way people travel on work or for leisure. This is the story of GMR Aero. What makes GMR Aero Asia's #1 and the world's #2 private airport operator? It's simple. We dream big. We don't dream just airports. We dream more than airports. We dream of sustainable economic ecosystems around the airport. This is the story of pioneering cities, of opportunity around an airport, and going on to the creation of travel and cargo hubs, and also tourism and entertainment destinations. This is the story of giving back to society by creating thousands of jobs around your airport. The GMR Varalakshmi Foundation impacts over 5 million lives in the areas of education, health, livelihoods, and community development. This is not just the story of your airport. This could also be the story of world-class workplaces around your airport. GMR Aero has a proven track record of over 2 decades, building world-class greenfield and brownfield airports. From an intercontinental airport in Delhi to international airports in Hyderabad, Bungapura, Indonesia, and tourism-based airports in Goa, Greece, and the Philippines. Forging a successful alliance along the way in 2020 with our co-promoter and strategic partner, Group ADP, GMR Aero is committed towards becoming net zero carbon by 2030. Delhi and Hyderabad airports are among the few airports that run 100% on renewable energy. This is the story of creating gateways to global aviation learning. This is the story of GMR Aero. We will design for you experiences that are more than just smooth landings and takeoffs, more than just world-class duty-free, F&B, or retail, more than just the finest passenger management technology, more than just silent, unobtrusive security. We will design, build, and operate for you something that is more than just an airport. GMR Aero, your caring gateway to a connected world.
Thank you. And now it is my pleasure to invite on stage Mr. Rajesh Arora, CEO, Business Development, Joint Ventures and Adjacencies GMR Airports Limited, to kindly share insights into GAL's strategic vision contributions to global aviation infrastructure and their ongoing efforts in transforming airports into world-class hubs of innovation and connectivity. So ladies and gentlemen, over to Mr. Rajesh Arora.
A very good afternoon. I think it's a tough job to do when you are sitting just before lunch. You're